right, so today I'm going to show you guys how we create this nasty skin graft with some skin staples and some suturing. This is a prosthetic that Leah and I made, and it is available for purchase at freakmo.com. I'm going to start by suturing up and stapling up this prosthetic. Pull this suture thread until it's just a little bit in the end here. Then with the closed clamp, I'm going to wrap twice, and then grab that and pull it through. And then grab this, one more wrap, and grab this end and pull it through. Then we have our staple gun, and then you position it where you want it, pull the trigger, bam, you get a staple, just like that. Let's do that all the way around, all ready to go. So first of all, we're going to hold up the prosthetic against where we're going to apply it. Once you make sure that it's going to fit, so you don't want it to go too far like over the lines here, because they're going to just crinkle and move a little bit differently. So if you can get them kind of like in between, have that wrap around a little bit. And then I'm going to measure out some adhesives. I'm going to use Telesis 5 and Telesis 5 thinner. And then I've got brushes that I'm going to use for the adhesive, which I keep as my adhesive brushes. So I usually put it into the thinner first just to break down any stiffness that might have left in it from the last time I applied stuff. And then get a little bit of the Telesis 5 on here. And I'm going to just anchor this down the center initially. We're going to start with that. And I'm going to work my way all the way around the edges up to about the cap plastic line, and then I usually do the cap plastic last just because it makes it easier to get smooth cap plastic that way. So I'm just going to probably fast forward through this while I apply the rest of it down. Once you've got the edges down, if you can see any little air bubbles or anything, or any little areas, I'm going to get my thinner and just go up underneath and re-lift it up, because those are going to stay there. Oh, my cap plastic is too thin. Just try and get out air bubbles, reactivate any glue. And what you're aiming for is something where you can just see all the skin tone coming through, and there's not really, like here you can see that's not quite all the way down on that edge there. So if you see any kind of cloudy areas or areas that don't look like the skin tone, because once you start to blend this out, it's a lot harder to be able to lift it up and correct it, and once you start to blend it out, it's not going to make any of those mistakes disappear. So fix them first. So I've got my acetone here. I'm just going to dip it in to my acetone here, and we're going to run it along this flashing and get that off first, and that will just break down, and I find it helpful just to snap that in half. And we'll just get that off first, and then if we need to blend any other bits around the edge. So it's pretty much just peeling off by itself because the cap plastic's so thin. It's like, I'm done, bye. And then we'll go around just the outer edges just to make sure it's all super smooth. You don't want to go too close into the prosthetic or the sculpt, because that's when you will start to reveal the silicone edge. Cool. All right, so those edges, I'm going to get a stipple sponge and rip off an edge. Put it on my self-locking tweezers. Get out the Pros-Aide cream and get a little bit on a cotton tip. Seeing this little torn off edge, just put a really thin amount all the way around the edge of this prosthetic. And that will help just to disguise that edge even further and keep it held down a little bit longer. Kind of safeguarding both for the appearance of the edge and also for the longevity of the prosthetic. It's quite thick, so you do want to make sure you keep it quite thin, keep it blended out, or else it will take a very long time to dry. Cool, and we'll let that dry for a minute. All right, I'm going to get some matte sealer by Bluebird and just put literally just a little tiny drop in here. And this is going to do pretty much what the name suggests. It's going to mattify it and it's going to seal it. So especially these edges where they're going to be shiny from the cap plastic anyway, but they're extra shiny from the Pros-Aide, and they're also sticky from the Pros-Aide. So we're going to seal that and mattify that so it looks more like skin. And I just put a little bit of alcohol, so it's about 50% alcohol, 50% matte sealer, just to thin it out because it is a concentrate. And then I'm just going to put this over the edges here before coloring. Now we're going to get into the fun part, coloring. I'm going to get the dark flesh tone palette. I think coloring, obviously it's very individual to a person's skin tone, but it's also individual to the differences between the prosthetic and the skin. So Leah's got a bit more of a tan on the backside of her arm, which most people do. So it matches pretty perfectly here, just needs a little bit more tan around the edges. Maybe this needs a little bit more paleness in the center and a bit more tan around the edge. So we'll start with the tan around the edge. Let's get some, I'm also going to try some espresso too, just like thinned down. So I usually put alcohol in the lid just to thin it down. I'm going to use this brush to spatter, and when I'm spattering it's just nice to have a lot of alcohol in the brush. And you can see just how translucent it is in the lid here. I'm going to hold my brush and just pull the bristles back. And that's going to spatter on a nice broken up skin tone for us. Build it up in layers, it will look more realistic. And you really just want this to be thin and built up slowly. Espresso 1 as well. Let's get some bamboo 1. Use this lighter color down the center. Again, keep it quite liquid, lots of alcohol. Just gonna get a little bit of alcohol on paper towel and just take back some of that tan. We'll get into the complexion palette. And we're gonna get a little bit of, let's get a little bit of pale yellow to do some highlight colors, or pastel yellow, I should say. I'm gonna just do like just a general kind of highlight over because I feel like my tan went a little bit cray-cray. With the lighter colors, you still want to keep it quite transparent, but they do tend to dry down a little bit darker than when you first put it. Let's get some of this light mauve. Spatter that over the top. Actually, I might mix it with a tiny bit of this DT blush as well. If you put a little bit too much down, you can just mop it up. Cool tone blue. And the blues especially you want to keep very subtle. I'm going to get a little bit of another kind of mattifier, liquid powder shine illuminator. The edges where some of the shines come back. Get a reference photo up. Use a complexion palette for this. And I want to get some of this light mauve and dusty rose mixed together. And I'm going to start by popping that in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to color everything first and then take the color back off the topmost skin part. So there are definitely some darker lines across, so I'm going to start doing that with the dark mauve. I'm not sure what causes these lines. I'm just going to copy that reference image and put some of them in there. And I'm going to get some capillary and we'll just darken up some of these. There's like a darker chunk in one of the corners, so we'll add in a darker chunk. And just go over some areas with this. A lot of it's not super fresh, but we'll just add a little bit on top of some of the colors that we already have going on. I might also add some of this red rum around the edges and maybe in the stitches. So all this is going to get taken back, so we're kind of painting kind of loosely, knowing that we're going to take a little bit back. I'm going to go over the edges with some dark mauve. A little bit more capillary. Just in a couple of areas. I'm going to get a brown in there as well. The palette has some of my favorite browns. Let's get some of the age spot. Let's do a little bit of that in some of these areas. Makes it look a bit older and crustier. Let's add a little bit onto the sides. I'm going to start with dark mauve. Just going to add like a couple of kind of like scratches, a couple of like dots and things, just to make it look kind of sore and imperfect around. Go back and soften these as well, but we'll start with this. All right, so let's start to soften everything. I'm going to get a couple of cotton tips and some isopropyl alcohol. And we'll just start going over the top, trying to get that white skin graft color back. And let's soften those little marks around the outside. I'm going to get a little fluffy watercolor brush and some alcohol. I'm just going to quickly pat over these and I'll just soften them into the skin. This is looking closer. I might just pop in a little bit more. We'll just go in and darken a couple of these areas a little bit more. I think that's looking pretty good. Let's get the drying blood on there. I'm going to use Fleet Street Drying Blood in Dark. Decant a little bit. And it's going to pop it on just kind of like roughly around here because I know that I am going to take a lot of it back once it's dried. I just want like really just like remnants of dry blood. All right, let's let that dry. And while that's drying, we're going to put some gloss in the center. So I might just soften this blood first in the center. Put some gloss in there, which is just KY, and then we'll go around the outside and soften that afterwards. Cool. Get some nice moistness in there. And I might just take off some of the top layer of it so it kind of sits inside those grooves a little bit. Now that the blood's nearly dried, we're going to get a paper towel and a little bit of water. And I also like to use cotton tips. I'm going to get some alcohol and maybe just take back a couple of these so it doesn't look as same, so it looks like a little bit more asymmetrical in places. Tiny bit of dried matte blood gel, just to give a tiny bit of texture in some of the chunkier parts. Probably too much, let's take it back a tiny bit. You know me, I like to put stuff down and then go, oh, take it back a tiny bit. Just chill a little bit, Kiana. All right, move it around. Yeah, still a slight shine. Get a little bit more of this mattifying cream. I'll just mattify. Just soften one a bit. Let's start the removal process. Gonna use some Telesis Super Solve. I'm gonna decant this into a little, oh my God, and get it on the table. I'm gonna use this brush. We're gonna get underneath somewhere we can find an edge and then just work from there. Let me get some cotton rounds, and with this, we're going to get off all of the cap plastic left on the outside of the skin, any leftover bloods or alcohol paints, and we're also going to use it down the center to get off any remaining adhesive. Yay, I think you're good.